There's a quiet kind of power that comes from being alone, not lonely, but alone. It's the kind of solitude that doesn't ache. It strengthens. The kind that doesn't leave you empty. It fills you with your own voice, your own rhythm, your own truth. We've been taught that connection defines us, that relationships are the ultimate measure of belonging. But what if true belonging starts with you sitting in silence, hearing your own thoughts, realizing that you are not incomplete without someone else's presence? Living alone is not a declaration of isolation. It's an act of reclamation. It's choosing to live in alignment with yourself rather than in constant negotiation with others. It's where you stop trying to earn peace from someone's approval and start finding it within your own stillness. Because once you learn how to live alone and love it, you stop settling for relationships that make you feel unseen, unheard, or unimportant. This isn't a rejection of love. It's the recognition that love built on self-abandonment is never real love. Living alone teaches you that your energy, your space, and your silence are sacred. And when you protect them, you start attracting people who honor them too. So here's the truth. Living alone beats any relationship that demands you shrink, perform, or compromise the core of who you are. There's a sacred kind of transformation that begins the moment you start living alone. At first, it feels unfamiliar, the silence, the stillness, the lack of another voice filling the space. But that silence is where your emotional independence begins to take shape. You start to realize that every emotion you feel, joy, sadness, fear, peace, belongs entirely to you. You are no longer reacting to someone else's moods or trying to manage someone else's energy. You are left with your own emotional landscape, unfiltered and raw. And in that rawness, you begin to see what you've been avoiding for years. Living alone becomes a mirror that reflects the parts of yourself you've been too distracted to notice. The moments of loneliness you feel aren't a punishment. They're an invitation to connect with yourself more deeply. They teach you that being with yourself doesn't have to be uncomfortable. It can be freeing. When you rely on someone else for your emotional balance, you give away your power without realizing it. You begin to measure your worth through their approval, your happiness through their attention, and your peace through their presence. Living alone strips that dependency away. It forces you to ask hard questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What makes me happy when no one is there to validate it? What do I need when I can't call someone to soothe me? These questions are the beginning of emotional growth, because when you stop outsourcing your emotional stability, you begin building it from within. You learn that you are capable of comforting yourself, of creating joy, of navigating pain without falling apart. That's what emotional independence looks like, not isolation, but the confidence that you can hold yourself through anything. One of the most powerful lessons of living alone is realizing that solitude doesn't mean abandonment. It means responsibility for your feelings, your healing, and your peace. You learn that you can be the one who shows up for yourself. When life gets hard, you no longer reach out to be rescued. You reach inward to find resilience. The quiet moments that once scared, you become your sanctuary. You discover rituals that ground you, lighting a candle at night, journaling before bed, making coffee in the morning just for you. Each small act becomes a declaration, I am enough. Living alone shifts the narrative from, I need someone to take care of me, to, I trust myself to take care of me. And that trust becomes the foundation for every healthy relationship you'll ever have, including the one with yourself. In relationships, we often lose parts of ourselves trying to maintain connection. We silence our needs, dim our light, or compromise our truth to keep someone close. Living alone teaches you that love should never require that kind of sacrifice. When you're emotionally independent, you stop trading authenticity for attachment. You no longer enter relationships from a place of lack, but from abundance. You already know who you are, and you bring that wholeness into every connection. You stop clinging to people because you realize that your peace doesn't depend on their presence. You've built a life that feels steady with or without anyone in it. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you secure. It means that when you choose to love someone, it's because you want to, not because you need to. Living alone also reveals how powerful self-compassion can be. When you make mistakes or fall into old emotional patterns, there's no one there to judge you, only you. And instead of being harsh or critical, you learn to be gentle. You start speaking to yourself the way you wish someone else had. You learn that emotional independence isn't about never feeling pain. It's about giving yourself the grace to heal from it. The nights that feel quiet and heavy become opportunities to nurture yourself in ways you never did before. You start to see that strength doesn't come from being untouched by emotion, but from allowing yourself to feel everything and still choosing to stand. Living alone teaches you that you don't need someone else to make you whole. You were whole all along. The peace, the power, and the clarity that come from that realization are things no relationship can give you, but every healthy one will require you to have. And so emotional independence isn't about rejecting love. It's about preparing for it. It's the realization that true intimacy only happens between two whole people, not two halves looking to complete each other. Living alone teaches you how to be that whole person. It gives you the emotional muscles to stand on your own and the wisdom to know when to let someone in. You no longer fear being alone because you've discovered the strength and serenity that come from being at home with yourself. You stop waiting for someone else to fill the silence because you've learned to fill it with your own laughter, your own peace, your own purpose. Living alone teaches you that your emotional well-being isn't a gift someone gives you. It's something you build, protect, and honor every single day. And once you've learned that, you'll never give that power away again. When you begin to live alone, you step into a space that no longer echoes with the noise of other people's expectations. There is a stillness in solitude that can feel overwhelming at first, but it's in that stillness where the real work begins. When no one else's voice fills the room, your own finally becomes audible. You start to hear your inner dialogue, the doubts, the dreams, the longings you've buried under the demands of daily life and relationships. Living alone invites you to meet the person behind all the roles you've played, the caretaker, the friend, the partner, the pleaser. For the first time, you have the freedom to ask, who am I when no one is asking me to be something else? That question becomes the gateway to self-awareness, and the more you sit with it, the more layers of yourself you uncover. In relationships, it's easy to lose touch with your inner compass. You start aligning your emotions with someone else's moods, your habits with their routines, your choices with their comfort. But when you're alone, there's no one to mirror back your identity. And that's what makes solitude so clarifying. You notice what truly matters to you. Maybe you realize you love silence more than small talk. Maybe you find out that the dreams you put on hold for others still live within you, waiting to be revived. Solitude has a way of peeling back everything artificial until only your truth remains. It shows you the difference between what you were taught to want and what your soul actually craves. That clarity doesn't come from another person's reflection. It comes from the quiet, honest time you spend with yourself. Living alone teaches you to sit with your emotions instead of escaping them. You learn to recognize patterns, the way you react to stress, how you cope with disappointment, what triggers your fears. When you live with others, it's easy to distract yourself with conversation, routine, or drama. But when it's just you, avoidance no longer works. You start to see your emotions for what they are, messengers, not enemies. You begin to process them with patience instead of shame. That's the heart of self-awareness, not perfection, but observation without judgment. You learn to say, I'm feeling anxious, instead of pretending to be fine, or I'm lonely, without labeling it as weakness. Solitude becomes a kind of emotional mirror, showing you what's really happening beneath the surface and teaching you how to navigate it with grace. Through this deepening awareness, you also start to understand your boundaries, not the ones you use to keep people out, but the ones that protect your peace. You become more aware of what drains you and what nourishes you. You notice the subtle signals your body gives when something feels wrong, the tension in your shoulders, the heaviness in your chest, the silence in your intuition. Living alone sharpens that intuition because it removes the constant noise that dulls it. You start trusting yourself more, trusting your judgment, your needs, your instincts. You realize that your inner voice, the one you used to ignore, has always been guiding you toward alignment. And once you start listening, you can never go back to silencing it again. Most importantly, solitude teaches you that self-awareness isn't about isolation. It's about intimacy with yourself. It's about knowing your inner world so well that when you do connect with others, you do so from authenticity, not emptiness. You stop showing up in relationships to be completed, fixed, or validated. Instead, you show up as someone who already knows who they are and what they need. That kind of awareness changes the way you love, work, and live. You no longer bend to fit into someone else's version of you because you've already met the real one. Living alone doesn't just make you comfortable with yourself. It makes you proud to be yourself. And once you reach that place, no relationship can take away your peace because you've already built a home inside your own heart. Living alone gives you a kind of freedom that many people never experience, the freedom to exist entirely as yourself. There's no constant negotiation about what you want, no silent compromises to keep harmony, no performing to meet expectations. It's just you, raw, unfiltered, and fully responsible for your life. That freedom can be both exhilarating and terrifying at first. You realize that there's no one to distract you from your choices or to blame when things go wrong. But slowly, you start to understand that this is exactly where your personal power lies. Freedom teaches you accountability. It shows you that you are the architect of your peace, the designer of your routines, and the author of your joy. There's no external approval needed to justify how you spend your time. You learn to value your own permission above anyone else's validation. And that shift changes everything. The beauty of living alone is that you begin to rediscover yourself in the smallest moments. You wake up and realize you can build your day however you want. You can choose silence instead of noise, music instead of conversation, a walk instead of an argument. Every decision, no matter how small, becomes a reflection of who you are. That's what freedom feels like not chaos or isolation, but conscious choice, you start to see how much of your life was previously shaped by compromise. You ate what others liked, watched what others wanted, planned around someone else's schedule. Now you live in alignment with your own rhythms. You begin to trust your instincts again, the ones you ignored for the sake of keeping the peace. Living alone becomes a classroom where you learn that freedom is not the absence of love. It's the foundation of self-respect. Freedom also exposes your patterns. When you no longer have to adjust yourself for someone else, you start to see the habits that kept you small. Maybe you realize how often you apologized for taking up space, or how quickly you said yes when you wanted to say no. Living alone gives you the time and distance to unlearn those patterns. You stop rushing to please, to prove, to be chosen. You start choosing yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a conscious, loving one. You begin to set standards for what kind of energy and people you allow into your life. Freedom teaches you discernment. Not everyone deserves access to your peace, and not everything deserves your time. You understand that solitude is not punishment. It's preparation for a life lived with integrity and intention. There's also a subtle kind of joy that comes from freedom, the joy of creating a life that feels like you. You decorate your space however you want. You follow your impulses, chase your curiosities, and give yourself permission and to be spontaneous. You discover that your own company can be exciting, even inspiring. There's no need to wait for someone to join you to enjoy a sunset, a meal, or a moment of laughter. You become your own companion, and surprisingly, you realize you're quite good company. The freedom to experience joy without needing someone else to validate it becomes one of the most liberating realizations of all. You start to feel whole not because everything is perfect, but because you finally stopped seeking permission to be happy. Eventually, freedom teaches you what love should actually feel like. You realize that any relationship worth keeping must feel like this: spacious, not suffocating; supportive, not restrictive. Once you've experienced the peace of your own autonomy, you can't go back to relationships built on dependency or control. You begin to crave only the kind of love that adds to your freedom, not takes it away. Living alone teaches you that being on your own is not the opposite of love. It's the foundation of it, because when you know how to be free within yourself, you will never again mistake attachment for affection or control for care. Freedom becomes your greatest teacher, your truest companion, and your most loyal guide. And from that place, you don't just live, you live authentically, unapologetically, and beautifully on your own terms. When you live alone, you begin to notice the sacredness of your own energy. You start to realize how peaceful it feels to exist without constant demands on your attention, your emotions, or your time. That peace becomes addictive, not in an isolating way, but in a healing one. You learn what it means to be safe in your own space, to rest without tension, and to breathe without walking on emotional eggshells. From that safety, something powerful begins to form boundaries. Real, healthy boundaries, not the kind built from anger or fear, but the kind built from deep self-respect. Living alone teaches you that your peace isn't something to be negotiated, it's something to be protected. You begin to understand that not everyone deserves access to your presence, and not every situation requires your involvement. In the quiet of solitude, you start to notice just how much of your energy used to leak away in relationships that demanded too much. You remember the times you said yes when you wanted to say no, the moments you bit your tongue to avoid conflict, the ways you overextended yourself trying to be understood. Living alone breaks that pattern. With no one around to drain or influence you, you begin to feel what your natural energy actually feels like: balanced, calm, and steady. That feeling becomes your baseline, your new normal. And when someone comes along who disturbs that peace, you feel it instantly. It's no longer about confrontation or guilt. It's about clarity. You know what your peace costs, and you refuse to pay for chaos with your well-being. Boundaries at their core are not about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself intact. Living alone helps you see that clearly. You learn that saying, no, isn't rejection, it's self-preservation. It's a declaration that you value your time and your emotions and your energy. You stop explaining your limits and start embodying them. You realize that people who truly care about you will never be offended by your boundaries. They'll respect them. Solitude helps you practice that kind of assertiveness without the noise of guilt or shame. Every time you choose peace over pressure, every time you honor your need for rest instead of obligation, you reinforce the truth that your boundaries are acts of love. Love for yourself and ultimately for others too. Because when your energy is protected, you show up more authentically, more present, and more kind. Another beautiful lesson that comes from solitude is learning to differentiate between loneliness and boundary setting. There will be moments when the quiet feels too heavy, when you miss the comfort of company or the sound of another voice. But over time, you begin to realize that loneliness doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It just means you're detoxing from unhealthy attachment. You learn to sit with the silence until it becomes serenity. You discover that solitude isn't the absence of love. It's the space where love can grow without fear or control. The stronger your boundaries become, the softer your heart grows. Because you're no longer loving from desperation or depletion, you're loving from fullness. You're giving from a place of choice, not obligation. Eventually, solitude transforms the way you relate to others entirely. Once you've experienced the safety of your own boundaries, you stop tolerating relationships that drain or diminish you. You no longer chase people who make you question your worth or apologize for your needs. You start gravitating toward connections that feel mutual, balanced, and respectful. The people who remain in your life are those who honor your limits and add peace instead of taking it away. Living alone teaches you that boundaries are not barriers to love. They are the framework that allows love to flourish. They ensure that your connections are built not on dependency, but on respect. And once you've learned that, you will never again feel guilty for protecting your space, your peace, or your soul. When you've spent enough time living alone, something shifts in the way you view love. It no longer feels like a desperate chase or a missing piece that needs to be found. Instead, love becomes something sacred, a conscious choice, not a fearful need. You begin to realize that you don't need someone to make your life meaningful. Your life already has meaning because you are in it. That realization changes everything. You stop seeking love as a way to escape loneliness and start understanding it as something you offer from fullness. Living alone teaches you that peace, joy, and purpose are not gifts someone else gives you. They're things you create, nurture, and sustain on your own. And when you learn to do that, you stop settling for relationships that disturb that peace. You no longer accept love that comes with confusion, manipulation, or uncertainty. You only open the door for love that feels steady, genuine, and kind. Being alone forces you to examine what love truly means to you. Without the distractions of constant companionship, you have time to reflect on your past relationships. What worked? What hurt? What patterns kept repeating? You begin to recognize that much of what you once called love was rooted in fear. Fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. Living alone strips away those illusions. It teaches you to separate affection from attachment, comfort from dependency, attraction from emotional safety. You begin to understand that real love doesn't demand you abandon yourself to keep someone else happy. It doesn't make you anxious, uncertain, or small. It feels peaceful, even in its passion. It feels like home, the same kind of home you've built within yourself. The most profound part of living alone is that it redefines what you're willing to give and receive. You learn that love should add to your life, not replace it. You stop handing over your happiness like it's someone else's responsibility. You stop begging for crumbs of attention because you've learned how to feed your own soul. You start to see that your standards aren't too high. They're simply aligned with the peace you fought to create. You know how calm feels now, and you can recognize when someone threatens it. Love becomes a choice made from clarity, not craving. You no longer ask, will they choose me? Instead, you ask, does this love align with the person I've become? That question changes not only how you love others, but how you love yourself. But living alone also gives you the space to understand that love should never cost your freedom. You've already learned how to build a life that feels whole without needing anyone to complete it. So when someone enters your world, you